Hi, everybody. Today I am so excited because we are going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I have a special guest with us. So not only are you going to hear from me and a lot of what I've said before, because I love talking about executive functioning, but now I get to ask another expert questions specifically about executive functioning, but executive functioning in the classroom, which I know is such a powerful way to build up our kids that are struggling with executive functioning skills because they live in the classroom every day. It's like a natural environment for them. And it's like an extra 2-for-1 because we also get to help all of the kids develop their executive functioning skills, which is better for the kids. But here's a secret, it's actually better for the teachers when their students have their executive functioning skills in check. It makes the whole classroom flow better. So this is Carol Bush, and she is an executive functioning coach actually from California. I met her through it's kind of like it wasn't a certification, it was like a mentorship program, and it was about 6 months, right? Wouldn't you say it was about 6 months?
Yeah.
With Dr. Dawson, and she is the founder of the Smart But Scattered. So we did a lot of reading, we did a lot of group projects, and throughout the course of the program, we all got to know each other. And since the program, we have our own little side group where we ask questions, and Carol has always been a great resource for all of us and the other people in the group. And now she has taken, I guess, a deep dive into executive functioning skills in the classroom. And that's what we're going to talk about, executive functioning skills in the classroom for teachers to be able to bring that in their classroom without stressing out or making it hard or difficult. So with that, Carol, hello. We finally coordinated. You can tell us a quick little bit about yourself, and then let's dive right into like what made you write the book and all those good things.
Absolutely. So I'm a classroom teacher, by trade, I should say. I started off as a high school teacher, fell into elementary and loved it. So stayed there for many years. And then I thought, oh, I really want something else. So I went into administration, managed to last 13 years there.
Oh, wow.
And survived, which always amuses me. And then decided, I was getting to the age where I was either going to stay in the schools or go and do something else. And I had become quite fascinated with so many students at the time. This was about 5 years ago now. So many, well, actually 6 years ago, if I think about that. So many students, so smart and so in so many ways capable, and yet underachieving. And that has always been a focus of mine. And I've always worked in regular ed classes and classrooms, but I've always been interested in the student who is struggling a little bit or struggling quite a bit, but not enough to be sort of removed from the classroom or having to go to sort of, I don't know, a school for that, right?
Or get extra so they kind of like, I feel like these kids with executive functioning challenges, they kind of like fly under the radar because they're
A lot of
neither
them do.
here and they're neither here where they need services and get identified. So they're
Yes.
just floating in a general ed classroom kind of
Yes.
struggling.
And because of the comorbidity that goes along with a lot of the challenges, like ADHD, some of the symptoms can look, they're behavioral. They come out as if it's a behavioral problem, which in the classroom, that's what it looks like and it feels like. And so to a lot of teachers, it feels willful.
Yes.
Because it feels like it's on purpose. And it is, I'm not saying it never is.
Right. And also, I think it feels on purpose too because it's inconsistent. So some days they can tick, tick, tick all the boxes. So I know they can do it because they did it, but then the rest of the days, so it must be on purpose, right?
It must be on purpose. Yeah, exactly. And so, and because I become so interested in all of this, I decided I was going to take a leap. And so I started doing some training, and I met up with my writing partner, and I just got super lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. And she had this whole idea. She had done some research, and she had been training teachers. So she was in the thick of it. And she was applying to do her PhD at the time. And we just hit it off. She's based in Toronto. And we hit it off and got on so well. And we decided to partner up and work together. And she got cheeky with regards to the book. She phoned me up one day and said to me, I don't know, I just got a bit cheeky today. I was on, talking to Peg Dawson about something, and I asked her, she was so interested in the book idea. I asked her, well, why don't you come and write with us, Peg? And so Peg took a look at the table of contents and came on board. And so then we got really lucky. So it was just such a marvelous experience. But I think what we really wanted to do was to write a book for teachers that was not this sort of like impractical pretend way that classrooms are meant to be, or how some people think that classrooms are going to be, but how classrooms really are, right? Laurie had been a teacher for 17 years. She knew what being in an elementary classroom was. I'd been in elementary education for over 20. Actually, by then, including the administration, it was 33 years by that stage of the game. So it was a really long time. And of course, and we had Peg. So it was just, we wanted to do it.
Perfect storm.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great partnership. And we wanted to get teacher stories. And so we relied heavily on a lot of teachers for the book. And that was also fantastic. I think in many ways, the book would be so much less than without those teachers' stories. They really brought what we were thinking to life. So that's how it all happened.
Well, that's a great story. And I didn't know all those details. So thank you for sharing it. Yeah. And I think having the teachers there makes it like a lived resource. It's not just like, here's my PowerPoint to do this. Like it talks about, and that's one of the things that I really liked so much about when I read the book, is because it kind of really takes what's actually happening in the classroom. And I felt like it wasn't like they had to do, this was my takeaway. They didn't have to do all this extra stuff. It was like, this is what the classroom looks like. These are great ways to weave in and embed these principles, stages, steps, into what you are already doing. Examples were, like if somebody asked a question because they lost their homework, or instead of saying, oh, you're always forgetting your homework, starting to use that language is like, oh, it seems like, maybe your organizational skills could improve. And then all of a sudden that gives the child something to do that's actually, it's not my fault. Like it's not like I'm a dummy or I'm lazy that I forgot. And it's not the teacher having to scold me or give me a check mark or a 0. It's like, oh, this is your organization problem. Oh, okay. Well, like, here's how we can help this. Like, it was just like a seamless ebb and flow of how you guys brought the information into the classroom, which is why I loved this resource. And I think this resource is going to change a lot of what happens in the classroom. And not only just that, I get a little dramatic in these things, not what happens only in the classroom, but it's going to make the experience better for the teacher, which means we're going to have teachers staying in the classroom longer. I know that's a huge problem now, with teachers leaving the classroom and good teachers leaving the classroom. And I feel it's because a lot of the resources at their fingertips aren't this. Like, I feel like this is like what they need to make their classroom experience easier. In addition to it, it's going to help all of the students, because we know that executive functioning skills have to be built for everybody. They get better and they scaffold on top of each other for everybody. And then we know there are children that are identified with struggling in executive functioning skills. So it's going to help that pocket of kids that are in there, and it's going to help all the kids
Yeah.
So it's like a win-win. It's a triple win for the teachers, the kids struggling, the kids that aren't struggling with it. It's just going to reinforce it because these executive functioning skills are really the markers for being successful in your classroom, successful in your journey as a student, successful as how you show up as an adult, how you show up in the community, whether you're going to have the soft skills that are more important than getting, an A in pre-calculus to live your life the way it was supposed to be lived. So this is changing. This can really change the trajectory of a student and of a teacher, how she shows up in the classroom. So that's why I love this so much.
Well, thank you. I really feel that that was the goal of the book, was to really highlight, because teachers are already doing so much. They don't need another curriculum.
They don't need
They don't need another curriculum that they have to spend their summer learning how to use. The school doesn't need to spend thousands of dollars paying for a new thing. It doesn't need to be like that. You just need a book. And the book itself lends itself to professional development, right? And so or a book club even. Because
that's what I was going to say. I think it would be a great way. Can you imagine if we totally flip the whole education system? Instead of having all these expensive professional developments and curriculums, and God forbid, not one more computer program, they did a book club using something like this as their, guide.
Yeah.
And then you could act on it, and then you can problem solve together as a team. Like, here's how we did this.
Yeah. Exactly. And what was that like? And did any of the students say, what was their feedback? Did you improve on anything? Like, the book suggests this, but what did you come up with? Because unless you make things your own, as a teacher, it doesn't work for you in your classroom. So it's great to look at somebody else's suggestions and take them. But then I think that the most successful teachers are the ones who actually then say, oh, that was a great germ of an idea, but I'm going to add this and I'm going to add that and I'm going to add the other. Teachers are already doing so much. They're doing so much of this stuff in their every day-to-day jobs.
Oh yeah, they already do it. They don't know that they may not know that they're
they may not know they're doing it, and they may not know that it's called this or called that, or there's research out there actually to support all of this fabulous stuff that they're doing. And so we wanted to highlight all of that stuff and actually give credence to it and bring in bits and bobs of research, so that if Laurie, I'm just laughing because if Laurie was here, she's the academic researcher, right? And you're getting all the big research terminology. With me, it's bits and bobs, right? That's what you get. Yeah. and so, but it does, it highlights some of the research. It sets that research apart. So anyone who's really interested in the research can go ahead and read it and actually do their own research, right? Go down a path of their own. I mean, I don't know when the teachers would do it, maybe 3 a.m. Maybe that would be a good time in their busy day.
Nobody is doing research.
I don't know. But then it would, but then what we were really interested in is the practicalities. When you start to introduce executive functioning skills into your classrooms, at any age, we happen to actually concentrate on K through 8th grade, but at any age, you, instead of strategizing for the students, begin to strategize with them. And they learn to do that for themselves, so that you are not hearing stories when those students go off to university and college that they're having to phone their mum or dad and say, could you speak to so-and-so because I failed a test and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. Or I didn't get any homework in last semester because I couldn't follow the instructions and I was too embarrassed.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. And that's the other spectrum of it's like,
Exactly.
come help me do everything. And then the other's like, this is too much, so I'm not doing it because I've never practiced doing it. They don't know
Exactly.
what it's called. They just think, oh, I'm just a dummy because I messed this up again. Uh,
Exactly. And
so
so
yeah,
there's a lot of silence and shame there for a lot of students. They don't say anything. And so we wanted to sort of educate and enable and highlight what's already been done. And by doing that, it's like, I always think that education goes through fashions. It's just like everything else. A while ago, everyone was talking about dyslexia. And then some years later, it was ADHD. And now suddenly executive functioning is
it's
just
creeped its way up to the
starting to
top.
creep its way to everybody's ears. And everybody's starting to think, well, what is this stuff? But basically, it's everything that's going to help you get stuff done. And so
What I say too.
if you are super bright, but you can't turn in your homework,
Woof.
you are not going to achieve.
I call it being smart versus being a good student.
Yeah.
And actually, I almost feel like the being a good student part, which is all of the executive functioning pieces, is
Yeah.
almost, dare I say, more important than being, the smart kid that has like great testing scores and, IQs. Because if you don't have, and, I'm kind of in jest, one's not more important than the other. But if you do not have these pieces, you can't learn algebra. You can't remember algebra. You can't remember turning it in. You don't know how to study, all those things. But you can get better at academics. You can get better. But if you don't have these pieces, your struggling is going to be way harder than maybe somebody who scores, academically a little bit lower in reading comprehension.
Yeah.
Because this
You
is
don't understand that in order to be able to do well at math, you need a decent working memory. To be able to learn how to read and understand stories, you need a decent working memory. In order to have a decent working memory, you need to build your short-term memory. And if you don't understand those, let's say we just take that, right? And if you don't understand that, and then you don't have an understanding that at, I don't know, age 6, these things are still in huge development, and that not everybody's at the same pace. So that some students in the classroom are not going to be as good at doing things as others, and it doesn't actually mean anything in the long term.
just to add on to this, that same 6-year-old that's, you're in a 6-year-old class and they're at different levels. Imagine if we were to, intentionally and explicitly, not accidentally, work on their executive functioning skills as they then all of a sudden, they're going to have that much more success. And again, their trajectory can be totally, changed by this, and I see it. So one of the things that I do, I'm an occupational therapist, if you don't know me, and I'm based out of Miami. And now I can do things virtually too. But so I have my private practice in the afternoon. I have some digital products, and my private practice consists of occupational therapy with a big emphasis in executive functioning coaching, right? But the other part of what I do is during the day, I get to be in a ton of different schools as the school-based occupational therapist. So like you have your experience coming as a teacher and Lori has her experience coming as a teacher. I get to go in and see also what really happens in the classroom. And that's kind of why, I'm having this interview. That's kind of why I had another interview on ADHD in girls, because I feel like the more information we can get out there to bridge kind of the gaps from what happens in the classroom and into the real world. And, even if they're getting, occupational therapy or coaching or, therapy with with a psychologist, the better it's going to be, and the team will really be able to work together. So it's so much more powerful if the child is struggling with executive functioning skills, if they have somebody helping them with executive functions. But imagine if we had a classroom that built that up as well. So I see the kids getting stuck, but I also see the teachers stuck.
Of course.
The teachers are, I mean, I can't tell you time over time, like, Nicole, how do I help them? Nicole, what do I do? Whether it's, depending on what's going on, but they really do need a lot of support. I mean, here in Florida, I know you're in California, so here we have a general education classroom, and our kids that, and of course, there's the kids that aren't even identified, right? So within a general education classroom, you have a variety of levels. Some kids have been identified, and they are in the special ed department, but they're in the general ed classroom with a general ed teacher. So I really think the trend is now that the general ed teachers really need as much supports for dyslexia, how to teach a child with dyslexia how to read, how to help executive functioning, how to help ADHD, because there's no more this separate, we don't have this separate environment where the kids that are struggling with attention go to. They're in the classroom with the general ed teacher, and the teachers are like heartbroken, like, how do I help these kids? How do I help? So that's a big piece of why I really appreciate what you guys came up with, and why I do a lot of what I do, because the teachers want to help. They just need more resources that don't require them standing on their heads and tapping their big toe. And I'm all about embedding things into a classroom that they already have. So one of the things that I did want to talk, I mean, we're going to suggest you guys grab the book. It's a great resource for everybody. But one of the things that I just wanted to chime in, just a little bit of talk about that concept that you brought into, you guys have a whole chapter on executive functioning literacy. And I call it building, I do a workshop on executive functioning skills in the classroom too. And I've tweaked it since reading your book. I've added a couple of extra things. But I call it executive functioning culture, right? We don't want it to be like a stigma, and it's not just for the kids that get pulled out. So just like I relate it to, there's a lot of bringing social emotional into your parenting, social emotional into your classroom, talking about being frustrated, embarrassed, with the younger ones, labeling the feelings so that they can understand it a little bit more. But I think there's so much value in labeling the executive functioning skills as well. And that is something you covered. So maybe you can give us like a little brief, like what went behind the scenes when you guys were doing that, and then we can.
Absolutely. I think that what we were thinking of there is, if we're going to hand over tools to the teachers, and then who are going to hand over the tools to the students, right, then the students need to understand that we all have executive functions. And what I love about working with executive functions,
say that one more time, what you just said.
Have executive functions.
All of us, including our teachers in the classroom with them.
Including the teachers.
Yes, okay.
And so everybody in that room is going to have strengths, and they're going to have challenges in their executive functioning. That does not mean to say that they have an executive function dysfunction. It just means that they're going to be better at certain things than others. And so if you think, I always say to the students, and even some of the adults that I coach, I always say, right, next time you're in a coffee shop, I want you to look around. Every single person has got at least 2 strengths and at least a couple of challenges. You don't have to sit in a coffee shop very long to even notice them. You might notice someone getting a little bit frustrated when their coffee is taking a little too long to be made, or that their sandwich that they actually fancy is no longer in stock. We could talk about which executive function is that. You can notice that. You might be having coffee with a friend who completely was meant to bring stuff but is totally disorganized, and their backpack is disorganized and they don't have what they promised to bring. because you were going to work on something together, and so on and so on and so on. But every single person in that room has got executive functions that are strong and that are weak. And I love that because it's so empowering. And I talk about my own executive functioning. And I even say things like, and actually it's even true, my strength is organization. But if you saw my desk right now, you'd go, really? Are you sure about that, Carol? Because it's we're human. Yeah. And so in the classroom, when you start talking about, oh, how should we be when we want that last piece of blue paper? What could we use? And then they say, oh, I'm not being very flexible.
Yes. And that is just like, and how about instead of putting them on red, we talk about response inhibition?
Yes.
But then it's not like I'm the bad kid.
No.
I have to work on my response inhibition.
Yes. And I'm going to try and improve that, because when we actually become mindful of our executive functions and we work on them, they can improve.
Yeah, they do improve.
And they do improve. Yeah. Which is fantastic.
Which is exactly, yes.
So that's the power behind doing them as a whole class,
as a group, right? As a class.
Yeah. And then it becomes the language.
Yeah. And I think that so when I've talked to kids, either in coaching or sometimes my middle schoolers, there'll be a middle school teacher who will introduce this in the beginning of the class, right? In the beginning of the school year. Or there'll be, I have a college student and she's like, oh yeah, I had to take this class twice. And I guess it's a class in college where they teach you how to do these things. But the part that they're missing is that, maybe the middle school teacher, she just did it for a week as a beginning breakout activity, but didn't embed it into the classroom, which then some kids, probably the kids that are super already, all their ducks are in a row, organized, we're able to pick up on a few things. But our kids that are struggling, the ones that I see, needed that to be embedded throughout the school, year, school day, school week, months. So then the college students, the same thing. She's like, oh, we took this class several times. I had to take it twice. But so I've learned all the things, but how to use them in a way that's going to help me. Like I didn't even use them. Like I took the class, I got an A, but so it's not just the information, it's the way to apply it and embed it. And I think in a classroom situation, it's a beautiful space for them to grow together and see, the pluses and minuses that go within a normal range of students. When I say normal, I mean, 20 kids in a class, that's our population. Here. The building it into the classroom also is a good way for the teachers to start being more familiar with using it. So it's not like this mysterious executive functioning skills that's only for clinicians, or it's only for the neurologists, or for these coaching people that come around here. I don't even know what they do. Like it's a tool for all of us to use.
It's a tool for everybody. And I think that one of the brilliant things that Laurie did was she designed this barriers and strategies. And it's something that lots of teachers already do, but the barriers and strategies based on the research of Gabrielle Oettingen. And it's the sort of whole idea of saying, making a plan. If this happens, then I'll do that. And so what you do with your students is you look for all the barriers inside. Let's say you're going on a field trip, and you're a bit nervous about the field trip, and so you say to your class, what are some of the things that could go wrong on this field trip? So if this happened,
what could go wrong?
Then we'll do this. And you do it as a group.
Right.
And you start learning some of the things. They feel a lot more prepared. You can do the barriers and strategies protocol on the side of a road in 3 minutes. Because you can start using that language, right? Let's do 3 for 3. Let's do 1 for 1, right? You can do it like that just really quickly. And so it becomes the language of the classroom. You're looking for a barrier, what's standing in your way right now, and what is the strategy that you can use. And you can call them anything you like. Like if you're
and that also starts helping them to self-advocate and problem solve, which in
Exactly.
itself is a way for them to build their executive functioning skills. So bringing this back to how does this benefit the teacher? Now, all of a sudden, you have a bunch of students that their executive functioning skills have gotten better. And because their executive functioning skills have gotten better, they will be better students.
They're able to do more.
And they can do more in the classroom, which makes your job as a teacher easier.